liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Beagle,
Present.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Present.
Councilmember Behrman,
Present.
Councilmember Gotchel,
Here.
Councilmember Grenlin Fox, here, Councilmember Sharp,
Present.
Councilmember Smiley,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. Changes or additions to the agenda tonight as presented. City Manager.
Mayor, I have none.
Assistant City Manager.
I have none, sir.
Anything to dais? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of minutes. We got two sets of minutes to approve tonight. The first one is the regular City Council meeting minutes of December 12th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the minutes of the regular City Council meeting of December 12th, 2023. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The second set of minutes to approve tonight is from the regular City Council meeting of December 19th, 2023. Do I have a motion?
Support.
Any discussion? Seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the regular City Council meeting minutes of December 19th, 2023. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. No correspondence tonight, so it moves us to the first call to the public. The rules to the call to the public are as follows. The public shall address the council during the call to the public, which shall be included on the agenda immediately after correspondence and again immediately after new business. The first call to the public immediately after correspondence shall be limited to agenda items only. A person shall not address the council in excess of 5 minutes unless the time is extended by a majority vote of the council present. Persons wishing to address the council shall identify themselves and their place of residence and shall state their reason for addressing the council. And all comments by the public shall be made directly to the council. Do we have anybody for the first call to the public? Seeing none, I'll close the first call to the public and move on to city managers' reports. The first report tonight is the fire monthly report at December 2023. Any questions? Councilmember Behrman.
I've just noticed that we had 3 fires/explosions in buildings and just seems higher than normal.
Yeah, so typically that doesn't really actually mean that it's a fire specifically as you would think about starting a fire. It's just the way that it's classified. So those 3 events, I believe 2 of which were mutual aids to outside agencies, and the one that we had here was a small electrical fire.
Okay, so if we respond to a mutual agency, that counts in the count.
That's correct.
Understood. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. Second report tonight is the police monthly report of December 2023. Any questions? Okay, so getting off easy tonight. Consent agenda. All items listed on the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion of these items unless a council member so requests, in which event the items will be removed from the consent agenda and added to the regular agenda at the end of unfinished or new business. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Support.
I got a motion and a support to approve the consent agenda as presented tonight. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. No unfinished business tonight, so that moves us on to the first item under new business, which is a recommendation to confirm the mayor's reappointment of Jeffrey Isaac to the Board of Review with a term to expire December 31st, 2026, and the reappointments of Kevin Hinckley and Robert Zewald to the Tax Abatement Review Board with terms to expire December 31st, 2026. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right. As stated in the description, that these are, all 3 of them are reappointments to the committees that they are on right now. And with that, we'll go on and answer any questions. Councilmember Gotchel.
Shouldn't we consider I-Board?
Do we need a motion for that, or?
To redress it as separate, yes.
Make a motion to, well, would you prefer that I do just Jeffrey Isaac, or that the motions state that they should be separated with that board?
The last time you did it to vote to individually on the reappointments.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to vote on each reappointment individually.
Good, I got a motion and support to, excuse me. A motion and a second to vote on these appointments individually. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Nay.
Councilmember Behrman,
Nay.
Councilmember Gotchall,
Yes.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
5 yes, 2 no.
Very good. Any discussion? All right, seeing there's no discussion, the first vote will be for the reappointment of Jeffrey Isaac to the Board of Review. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. For the Tax Review Abatement Board, the reappointment of Robert Zewald. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchall,
No.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
6 yes, 1 no.
All right, and the reappointment of Kevin Hinckley to the Tax Abatement Review Board. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed?
No.
Councilmember Behrman,
Yes.
Councilmember Gotchall,
No.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox,
Yes.
Councilmember Sharp,
Aye.
Councilmember Smiley,
Yes.
Mayor Beagle,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Resnick,
Aye.
6 yes, 1 no.
Very good, thank you. Finishes new business number 1. Moving on to new business number 2 is a recommendation to approve sponsoring an applicant through the Oakland Police Academy with $26,424 charged as follows. $15,207 to Desk Aids account number 101-301-703.377. $3,368 to Cadet Fringe Benefits account number 101-301-709.100. $2,000 to Uniforms account number 101-301-956.372. And $5,850 to Training Police account number 101-301-955.372. Motion?
So, support.
Chief Langmeyer?
Good evening. What you have, if you're all not aware, Sergeant Louis McCaig is retiring this week after 28 years of service to the Winston Police Department. What you have before you tonight is our request to sponsor another recruit through the Police Academy to replace Sergeant McCaig. The Oakland Police Academy class starts on January 22nd. We have 2 people that have applied for that position, and we're hoping to sponsor one of them through the academy. The last person that we sponsored through the academy, Luke, we got a large amount of money back from a grant through the state of Michigan. I think of his academy training and wages and benefits and everything ended up costing us slightly over $4,000. We anticipate that same grant being available for this candidate if you approve us to send it through. We do have a spot reserved at the academy, and we're just looking for your approval to send somebody through.
Councilmember Behrman?
This is the 3rd person we've sent, or would be the 4th person we're sending through?
In my tenure, this would be, it's been so many. I've got to look at it by name. This would be the 5th.
And so far, all of them have worked out, and everyone's stayed.
Yes, they've all been fabulous.
Councilmember Grenlund Fox?
I support this. I think it's a great thing that we do. Just 2 questions. One, do we have any other retirements or people leaving that we know of on the horizon for the year?
None that we know of. This is the end of this big wave of retirements that we have. Louis is the end of a generation for us. We're going to miss him, but this is hopefully the last one that we have for quite some time.
Okay, good. And then my next question, and I apologize if I asked this before, but when we put someone through the academy, do we have them sign a letter saying if they don't make it successfully or if they leave within so long that they have to pay us back a portion?
Yes, ma'am. We have that. It covers it for 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Hello, Chief. Councilperson Grenlund Fox kind of asked the same questions I was gonna. But one little spin off from that,
Do we, and I think I've asked this before in years past, do we have a commitment of some sort after they complete to us for some short amount of time, or could they just go anywhere upon graduating from the police academy?
Well, they do sign a contract with us that they will stay for 4 years or reimburse us.
Oh,
For the
okay.
police academy expenses that we have, they have to sign that before we'll even send them on to the academy.
Okay, I thought that, I misunderstood part of that. Okay, thank you. And while I've got the mic, thank you to Sergeant McKeag for, all his years here in Wixom, and it'll be strange not seeing his name on stuff. So,
We will miss it.
yeah, I hope we have a little party or something.
So,
Thank you, that's all.
Councilmember Sherb.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Langmeyer, I see that no budget amendment is required, which is good, but I can't recall exactly what's in each category. I assume we plan for this retirement and to fund a police aid for the academy in the budget. I know it's contained in the budget, but was that part of the budget sessions that we had, that we said, hey, we're gonna, I seem to recall it was either 2 or 4, and we had.
It was one. We asked in the budget session to send one, which was Luke Kurzak, the gentleman you guys met last time. And that was to replace the new sergeant that we added to the police department at the beginning of the year, when we approved the extra sergeant on the road. We then sent Luke. That was the one that was budgeted. At the time that we wrote that budget, we were not 100% convinced that Sergeant McKeag was going to retire. So we didn't ask at that time for 2 people, with the understanding that if he did, finalize his plans, that we would just come before you folks and hopefully ask. We're not we believe these funds have enough funds in them to cover these expenditures.
It's gonna be
But as we get closer to the end of the year.
We're still at the end of the year. I know we're halfway through the year basically,
Yeah.
but I don't know how much of that we've spent so far.
Yeah.
So, but your expectation is you will still meet your budgeted line items there, those
Yeah.
4 lines, even including this
Yes.
extra above and beyond. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I can support this too. I think it's a real great program, and so with that, I have a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to approve sponsoring an applicant through the Oakland Police Academy with $26,424 charged as follows. $15,207 to desk aids account number 101-301-703.377. $3,368 to cadet fringe benefits account number 101-301-709.100. $2,000 to uniforms account number 101-301-956.372. And $5,850 to training police account number 101-301-955.372. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, Chief,
Yes.
you said there's 2 candidates. When will you know when you'll make the decision on which one you'll send?
It'll probably be tomorrow. We're really pushing our envelope here. This
Okay.
academy starts in, what?
Yeah.
12 days?
Yeah, it's 12 days, so,
We're close, so we'll probably have our final decision tomorrow.
okay, very good.
Yes.
Thanks. New business number 3 is a recommendation to introduce a mandatory ordinance to the City of Wixom Code of Ordinances, Title 13, Public Services, Chapter 13.08, Sewer Services System, Article 4, Wastewater Disposal Standards, Section 13.08.450, abbreviations to add PFAS, PFO, and, excuse me, PFAS and PFO, Section 13.08.460, definitions to amend regulations relating to PFAS, PFO, and PFAS, Section 13.08.520, pre-treatment of wastewater facilities to amend regulations relating to PFO and PFAS, and add a new Section 13.08.538, PFAS regulated under local limits, US EPA or the state of Michigan. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you. Mr. Sickmo.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the wastewater treatment plant is regulated through the state of Michigan under a National Pollution Discharge Elimination System, or an NPDS permit. And we recently had updates to that permit back in, August of this year. And one of the items in that was to update our ordinances to include PFOS, PFOA, and PFAS as parts of our local ordinances and our local limits. Back in the spring of last year, Fleece and Vanderbrink did a study for our local limits and came up with a couple of them, both PFOA and PFOS. So it's polyfluoroalkyl acids and polyfluoroalkyl substances, and they are included as shown in the local limits. Now, we would have 2 readings of that this council meeting and the following council meeting, just to make sure that folks, industrial users, know about the change in regulations. These have already been implemented in the IPP permits that are in the users here in Wixom already. We're just making it more of a local ordinance as well. So with that, be open for questions.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, we already report the numbers, I think, for the last couple of years, correct? I know on FNB's report,
Yes.
a monthly report.
Yep, we've been monitoring PFOS and PFOA, since 2018.
And if any exceedances are
We
occurring,
significantly dropped since then. We're under compliance with that as far as our discharges go, and that's primarily because of the pretreatment program. One of the caveats in this particular ordinance is certain regulations, like if we detect them in biosolids or something, we can go back and get assistance for cleanup of those things. It just puts a little more teeth into our ordinance, and that was recommended by the state. So.
Councilmember Concho.
Thank you. Do you recall how many exceedances we had last year? Were there any?
With
Any of them?
PFAS as a whole, I know this past year, I don't think we had any violations with PFAS as a whole from our industrial users. We did have monitoring issues with them, so like a lab problem where the sample didn't get collected or something like that, which resulted in a violation. But to my knowledge, we didn't have any discharges that exceeded our limits.
Okay. And what causes, I'm comparing the ordinance language, it didn't seem like there was, since you had mentioned missed collections and missed tests, it didn't seem like there was anything in here that would penalize for a missed test. Is that correct?
Well, it's there are other regulations, federal regulations for metal finishing that are required, and one of those is sampling. So if they miss a sample, it's a violation notice automatically, and then they have to sample within 3 weeks or a certain time period to gain compliance again. And I can't remember if that was the beginning of this year or the beginning of 2 years ago, but we did have an issue there. The industry that has that we've been working with has multiple things in place now that prevent that from happening.
Okay. Do you know, is there a penalty for the missed test violation for metal finishing?
So, yes, we have an enforcement plan that stipulates, aggressive, requirements for that. So it's kind of a tiered approach. So one issue is notice of violation, then it goes to compliance orders and administrative compliance orders, then fines and penalties after that. So if they return to compliance prior to that, they don't have fines and penalties associated with it. Now, that being said, if it happens more than twice or 3 times within a 3-month period, they have to there are escalated enforcement policies in place.
I have a few questions and thoughts overall on this. Under the table on what's page 4, the section that's in red that has 3 asterisks next to it.
Yes.
Talks, as you did, about the ability to go collect for additional costs for alternate disposal if we had issues. And you kind of just walked through the penalties, but there's a notice of violation and then administrative notice and then fines and penalties. And we're talking about something so toxic, as we found out a few years ago. And it's great that they've been in compliance, but we never know who might come in or what may happen. I feel like this maybe doesn't go quite far enough, and that for any instance of an exceedance or missed test, we need to skip to a fine that sets precedent that we're not gonna keep doing this, like $10,000 plus. That way it's a quick lesson that you don't miss a test, you don't discharge, and maybe you miss a test because you were discharging, something like that, where I think we need to set the precedent that you're not going to get a few warnings before fines. I think in this case, since these are so toxic to the environment, it just needs to go right to lesson time through monetary issues. I think we do need to implement a fine on this upfront, not as the third step, and maybe use that money, if it's ever collected, if we have exceedances toward like environmental or natural cleanup, we can use it for the habitat or something like that. But I don't want to see this be the third step as a fine, because we found out that things can potentially get ugly. We were extremely lucky though. And then skipping down a little bit to the newly added section 13.08.538. It kind of it talks about the process for applying, or not applying, but submitting your plan, essentially for review. Do we have a permitting process in place to use these chemicals or processes in the city? So they have to come, like if someone wanted to build a deck, they have to come apply for a permit. They have to come apply for a permit with the city to use that?
Yes, they do. So for your first question with the biosolids piece, actually the state was thinking that this was more, well, it is more stringent than the state's regulations for and the federal regulations for elimination requirements for biosolids. It's, we feel that, well, they didn't feel that we would necessarily have enough teeth in it to be able to issue the fines and penalties for it. What we're trying to do is just recover costs that are associated with the disposal. And that's how our attorneys had regulated it in the past. The one above that with molybdenum happened to be a different company, but we were able to utilize that language previously to help us not only regulate the problem, but also have all the cleanup along the collection system as well. The company that for the PFAS has come up, and they've been issued, issued invoices to recover the costs that the city has incurred because of chromium and also the PFAS issues that have been presented. That one just kind of puts a little bit more teeth into it. Secondly, the 1308-538, the upper local limits, we're trying to follow the guidelines of the federal government. There's metal finishing rules that have to be applied, and we're applying them with best management practices for PFAS, because that's how the state has been trying to regulate this one. It's been it has been very successful in Wixom and other communities to to have the baseline monitoring. So basically, if they don't have a permit and we find a company that we don't know about that is using PFAS or PFOA, they have a certain amount of time. We could initially issue a cease and desist order to stop them from discharging, but if they want to continue to discharge, they have to prove it. And it takes 90 days potentially to approve that process. It's not allowing them to violate for 90 days, it's stopping the process and allowing them to apply and have to be done with that application within 90 days. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so the current permitting for current users will say they all hold a permit that we know of.
Yep.
And does that, then we have the ability to revoke that permit if they've reached a certain threshold of violations? Like, we can tell them you can't discharge, period?
Yep. And you know, there's other stipulations along with our local limits for that. We've already implied these limits in their permits. We've had them in their permits for a number of years already. And we can do that as I guess, emerging pollutants come into existence for us. So as we find them, if there's an issue with them and it's getting downstream, we can regulate those without the ordinance. This is just an added limit, if you will, so that we don't get multiple ones coming into multiple industries coming in that all want to discharge the same amount. So that would keep us below the limits that we are regulated under through the state.
Okay. I appreciate all of the extra detail. I would still hope that we can add it. I understand having them reimburse or cover the cost for cleanup or alternate disposal. It's one thing just to pay for the cost. I think we need to add in fines, especially for mistesting, I think is a serious violation. And that's easy enough to know who misses a test because they miss a test. I understand it might be a little bit more difficult to trace from our effluent who the user was, but it's a little bit easier if you don't turn in a test that you know you didn't turn in a test and who didn't. So I would like, I know we have to vote on this again at a certain point, but if we can add in some structure for immediately penalizing things like that. It's just, it's so dangerous, and the state has their standards. I think they've hopefully learned a lesson, but I think we have a duty to look out for our community and not just fall back on what the state wants. I don't think it's probably stringent enough, especially the federal government. I mean, they found this stuff is everywhere now, and now it's a big problem, but they knew, like, we're supposed to trust them. I don't. So I think we should pretty much try to cut down on eliminating these things altogether, or at least making it an eye-watering experience when someone's not doing their due diligence when they're using the material. Thank you.
Assistant City Manager Benson?
I just had it's actually a question for Tim. You talked about earlier the penalties in the process for, you know, how that's all laid out is part of the NPDES permit, or it's a plan that goes associated with that, correct? You mentioned it earlier, I forgot the name of it.
Right.
But my question is, we have the ability to update or make amendments to that, correct? Right outside of, you know, an ordinance process?
We do through our permitting process, and it still has to be logical, and it still has to be agreed upon, because at the IPP portion of it, it's a contract, basically, at that point. Water regulations as a whole start with the federal government, the EPA. EPA Region 5 has control authority that was given to the state of Michigan back, I don't know, 20 years, 30 years ago, for regulating the NPDES permits. EPA regulates some other states separately as a whole. Michigan has chosen to regulate them, self-regulate, if you will, for that. So there's a control agency, there's set guidelines for, in this situation, primarily as metal finishing. There's a whole categorical process of requirements for industrial users that do metal finishing. 40 CFR 40 Title 40, Code of Federal Regulations, 433 was a primary metal finishing one, and then 413 was another metal finishing. And it's mind-boggling how much regulation there is for just metal finishing as a whole. And then it goes back to the state, and the state requires specific enforcement response plans that we have in place, and we've had them in place for, since the 80s. And those can be updated, but each time they're updated, it goes through a rigorous process, not only here at our plant, locally, through our attorneys, but also the state attorneys after that. So we did that with this ordinance, and to amend that might set us back. And in my mind, I wouldn't recommend that at this point. Your fines and penalties, if we want to talk about those, we can, and we have the ability to recover a lot of that. And I can show you how we've done that in the past. But under this particular ordinance, fines and penalties are in a different subject and a different ordinance.
Well, I understand not wanting to hold up, like, these regulations are beneficial, so it's better to get them in place. And it's maybe something that we can, if this passes after the second vote, then we know to re-engage the state and have the discussion about adding penalties, or do we already have that, and they said, no, don't do that?
No, it's a separate issue is what I'm implying.
It's not covered in
It's
this
not covered
ordinance.
in this ordinance.
Correct, but it was just said that this ordinance went through our attorneys and then the state attorneys, so don't vote against this because we just went through that process, and then we'll have to do all of that again, which I understand.
Right, and we can do that.
But I'm just saying,
I get it.
we pass it knowing then, once it's passed, we call them back and we say, hey, we would
Right.
love to do this.
I think that absolutely makes sense, right? We would have to initiate a discussion to bring up that we had a council member that inquired about the possibility of skipping through a stepwise process when somebody misses a sampling. How can we go about changing that? And we can have that discussion with the regulators and see what we can do there. But I think Tim's main point is just it's not relevant for this item, but your conversation is relevant for that future next step kind of thing. We can take that under advisement, and we'll go talk with our regulator friends here and see what we can do to effectuate that kind of change.
Councilmember Behrman.
Thank you. So I guess my question is kind of like piggybacking on what was said earlier. When we had that situation with that company that released a bunch of chromium, through our ordinance, we invoiced them for our costs. Did they reimburse us?
Well, that's another ordinance that we invoiced them for it, and there were portions that they did pay for automatically, but then there were also portions that were held up for more than 6 months, and according to our ordinance, we can roll those over into taxes. And so the city of Wixom was paid for all of the invoices that we imposed on them through tax.
And then, more importantly, were there fines and penalties from the state and the federal government that they incurred due to that release?
So, interestingly enough, I did have a conversation with an EPA representative this week on that particular subject, and they're still in review of that. So, it's still under consideration. And
So they may be fined, they don't know yet? I mean,
Yes.
Economically speaking, the moment it happened, we issued a cease and desist to them, and their entire plant was shut down. So, I mean, economically, it costed them a lot of money from the situation that happened. Realistically, from our standpoint, we're going to get reimbursed. The penalty side, which has been discussed tonight, may be coming still from the state and the federal government, is what you're saying.
Yep.
So
and-
adding one from us would just be another penalty.
Right.
I'm not saying I'm opposed to it. I just was more curious on if they've been levied the penalty yet and what it's going to cost them.
Yes, and they're under review too. I mean, it's been, what, a year and a half? since the incident. They've come a long ways towards compliance too, and they have been in compliance for, yeah, almost a year.
And not that they should ever have allowed what happened to happen,
Right.
but I'm not sure if $10,000 would be enough to prevent what happened, though. I assume that if they get a penalty from the state or the federal government, it's going to be substantially more than $10,000.
I would think so.
Thank you.
Councilmember Grandma Fox?
Thank you. So I agree with Councilmember Gotchel.
These, and we will have to initiate a discussion with the regulation folks as to whether we can make those changes. What are the things that we can change? What are the things that we could go beyond state policy or federal regulations and institute stiffer penalties or less stepwise progression? I think was what Councilmember Gotcha was speaking of. You know, you start off low and go to high, and instead of going to that, can we just go to the high when somebody does something because it's important and detrimental to the environment and causes problems that necessitate that kind of a response? So that's what I think what Tim's saying. We'll go to the regulating folks and say, now we're interested in talking about these penalties and provisions under this ordinance. How can we go about changing that? What are the parameters that we need to stay within? Are there restrictions as to what we can do? Those kind of questions, and then we can determine what we can do there.
Okay, I understand. Thank you for that clarification.
Yep.
And I support that completely. We all have heard stories about businesses that, you know, do whatever they want to the environment and, you know, they're in business to make money, right? And unless it's gonna hit them in the bottom line, doesn't mean they're gonna make changes. So I do support that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, Councilmember Smiley?
Thank you, Mayor Beal. No, just more of a comment. If we do revisit this and just essentially eliminate a warning, you know, step, I'd want to know, like, how often do we, you know, is it tested? And then, you know, what, there might be some very good reasons why it gets missed, and, yeah, I don't know anything about, you know, these kinds of things. I don't think anybody else up here does either. So I'd want to kind of what's the other side of the story on this too? Sometimes, you know, having a warning system in place is what makes, you know, finally you're going to get a penalty much more substantial, because, like, hey, we've asked you twice, you have given it to us, you know, but I don't know, it's the difference between, like, if you do it every day versus once a year, you know, well, that's kind of an element in all this as well. So just, if this comes back to us to look into all these things, I'll want to know that information and probably more stuff. That's all. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other questions? All right, seeing none, I got a motion and a second to approve the recommendation to introduce a mandatory ordinance to the City of Wixom Code of Ordinances, Title 13, Public Services, Chapter 13.08, Sewer Services Systems, Article 4, Wastewater Disposal Standards, Section 13.08.450, abbreviations to add PFAS, PFOA, and PFAS. Section 13.08.520, pre-treatment of wastewater facilities to amend regulations relating to PFOA and PFAS, and add a new section 13.08.538, PFAS regulated under local limits, US EPA or the state of Michigan. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
See you next time.
Thanks. And that concludes the new business portion of this meeting tonight. We'll move on to call to the public. I will not read the rules of the call to the public again, with the exception of anybody has anything to say, they can come on up and speak their mind. Seeing none, I'll close the second call to the public, move on to city manager's comments. City Manager Brown.
Thank you, Your Honor. So city manager update, I just covered a training program that I went through with the Michigan Infrastructure Council, or the MIC, and their asset management program. I described the program. It's basically a group of people that are involved in terms of contractors that work with the state and other organizations to establish best practices in the area of asset management. I learned quite a bit from the program, and the idea is that you're going to learn quite a bit from the program. You're going to come back more excited about improving your asset management practices, and you're going to come back to your organization and advocate for doing a better job on that front. One of the things that I learned throughout the process is we were in pretty good stead on on asset management with our capital improvement program that we've had in place for years and years. Something that I was already proud of, and it made me even more proud of going through this program because we've done a lot of work in comparison to peers on that front already. There was a lot of information about those best practices that we could take back and learn from. I'm cajoling Tim as to whether he wants to do the program. He hasn't agreed to do it yet, but a decent amount of commitment involved. It's about 20 hours, I think, when all is said and done between online classes, as well as sessions with peers to go over what your practices are and learn from each other and those kind of things. Very heavy Canadian component to it. The Canadians are leading the way on asset management according to this program. It's something that's already been implemented to a higher extent in Canada. And this is something that the state of Michigan governor legislature has picked up on and wanted to make a point of emphasis. The Michigan Infrastructure Council, the MIC that I mentioned, is an organization made up of appointees from both the governor as well as top members of the legislative leadership teams within state government. There's 9 people on it, and they sort of administer and monitor and present and develop this program. They're going through another set of classes right now. There's basically they call it a scholarship. So the cost was supposed to be $300. There was no cost to us because we qualified for the scholarship. I think that would be the case again if we send anybody else. I've put Tim's name in. They're going to start hounding him sooner or later as to attendance. So we'll see if we break them down and get them to do it or not. But Tim's interested in it, but it's just the time commitment is a decent amount. So we'll see. Maybe he'll recommend somebody else within his organization to do it. But we have another cohort, so to speak, that's getting started in the asset management program coming up. So we'll have multiple opportunities on that front. But very good program. Learned a lot. Got to see one of the other things that was part of it was just networking with other people in the business kind of thing. And I met quite a few people through the process. That it was a good learning experience and good for us as an organization. So that was just a quick summary on that. There's a website listed there if anybody's interested in hitting it to learn more about it. And then dates to remember. We've got a variety of things upcoming in January and February that are listed there. I won't cover them. If anybody has any questions on the asset management program, I'll do my best to answer it or talk about something else if there's anything on your mind.
Questions?
Thank you.
Assistant City Manager Benson.
The only thing I have to add is you will notice on the dates to remember the DDAs starting their Wednesday in Wixom program as they've done for the last few years. The moral of that is to kind of encourage traffic in the sometimes slower months downtown by, it's almost like a lottery type of deal where if you're caught dining in one of our restaurants downtown and sort of selected at random, you have the opportunity to have your meal paid for. So it's kind of, come on down and you might just get lucky. I just want to point out that if any city council members are interested in kind of participating in that surprise and in picking a patron of a restaurant at the time, please let us know if you'd like to participate. And we are taking kind of volunteers and signups. DDA board members, staff members have participated in issuing the awards, not receiving them.
It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
We'll do it one day. It's worth checking
So just wanted to point that out. If you're interested, let us know.
One more thing on that front, we're doing an over Pontiac Trail banner for that front to publicize that opportunity. It's already been printed. We're looking to get it up. Tim, I don't know, has anybody got the banner to you yet?
We've got 40-mile-an-hour winds this week yet. So.
Yeah, so doesn't look good for this week. Yeah.
Not yet.
We'll see about that, but we're going to try to get that banner up to publicize the program further. The idea is to encourage people to come downtown because you might get a free meal. So if you know that program's there, you might come downtown more often. So.
It'll be fine. Look at those little wind slots.
Yeah, those wind slots, they don't.
I'm kidding.
Yeah.
And that's all I have.
All right, very good. Council comments. Councilmember Behrman.
Thank you. I hope everyone had a good holiday and a good new year. The only thing I'll mention is as we're going through the appointments tonight, I noticed we do have a lot of vacancies again. I feel like we almost had them all filled.
Yeah.
So if anyone's looking to be involved, I believe there's an application on our website, and you could be on one of our boards that has some vacancies.
Very good. Councilmember Gotcho.
Thank you. I wanted to thank my personal DARE officer back when I was in elementary school, Sergeant now, Louis McKay, for his many years of service to the city and helping keep us all safe. I also did want to point out that we have 2 rules and procedures packets. One is the, we'll call it original, but I don't think any of us have voted on it since we've been up here. But this was put together by Mr. Dornan when he was city manager. And then the smaller print one, I was working on updating these with my thoughts as a draft for a few months, and now that we're into a new council, although it's all the same people here, I wanted to bring it forward. So there's my thoughts in there. If you have any questions, feel free to give me a call or text or anything. But I think it'd be good to get this approved at some point in the future. Thank you.
Very good. Councilmember Sharp.
Thank you, Mayor. No comments tonight. Happy New Year, and look forward to working with the council and city administration 2024.
Councilmember Smiley.
Thank you, Mayor Beagle. Nothing too much, just it's Happy New Year. It's the new year has started off very well, in my opinion. If you look at that there. And I hope the rest of the year goes well. Quick question for Councilman Gottschall. Thank you for the homework, first of all. I respond very well to due dates. If you want to set a little, just loose due date, even a month, it doesn't have to be too tight of a deadline, but that'll get me reading this faster.
10,000 page essay from you. No, the city manager and I spoke a little bit earlier. I think you had mentioned next meeting.
That's
but this was, when I was putting mine together and sent it to the clerk, my hope was just that we, by the end of next month, get it done. Because I know my thoughts aren't necessarily going to align with all of your thoughts on things, and so they always go together. But that's why it gives everyone a chance to review, kind of let it stew in and think about your thoughts, if anything should be added, changed. As well, there was stuff in here, some of it is just a rehash of things that are in the charter, I noticed, but then there were other things about when the clerk has to have a draft of the minutes and votes by, and I don't know if you follow that currently, but if you don't and you want to change, then you can give us some feedback as well if you want it. But yeah, I don't recall us having ever voted on this in the last 8 years, so.
No, we've
that's why
discussed how we have. I'm glad you've done it.
Yeah, everyone can just review and we can have a thoughtful discussion and hopefully get something passed that we can all agree with.
Okay. I'll aim for the February 13th meeting or by then. Thank you, that's all.
You're good. Councilmember Gremlin Fox.
Just adding on to what was already said, I'd like to thank those residents that were reappointed to the various boards and commissions. And congratulations, Steve, for getting through that program. And hope everyone has a great rest of the week.
Deputy Mayor Resnick.
Thank you, Mayor. Also, would like to say congratulations to Sergeant Louis McCaig on his retirement. I know he served this community very well over a long number of years, and a lot of great interactions with him over the years. Thank you to those residents and business owners that have volunteered for boards and commissions and their reappointments. I noticed that over the last 8 years, there's been some opposition on council to business owners who are not residents within the city getting appointed to the tax abatement committee. And if you recall, some years back, we actually decided, since 46% of the tax dollar goes to the school district, that we would have a representative from all the consolidated schools also on that board. And I decided to take a look back at my own situation. I pay about $4,200 of taxes in the city of Wixom for my 2,400 square foot residence, and I paid last year summer and winter taxes for my properties in the city of Novi, $170,000, right? Not including PTT portions of it. And I thought, that's about 2% to 98%. So the question, do I have a vested interest in what goes on in terms of tax rates and things of that sort, who gets tax abatements in the city of Novi, I would say yes. Because I've got 5 different commercial properties there and several businesses. So I think the notion that there's not a vested interest is not a good notion, because there is a vested interest in people who are not residents but have businesses operating in the city. So I still support the bylaws of that committee, that the majority of them shall have some property in the city, but so far everybody on there is either a resident or a business owner, so I think we keep well with those bylaws. Just want to make that comment. And that's all.
Very good. And I want to thank the business owners and residents for their reappointment to the various boards and committees that they're on. And I want to thank Sergeant Louis McCaig for his years of service with the city, and we're going to miss him. And at that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Support.
All right. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. Thanks, everybody.